Right, everyone. Again, pleasure to welcome Andrew Lang to present his talk on bridging the gap between business requirements and visual best practice. Really excited to hear this one. Andrew, I think you're online.
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, over to you, my friend.
Okay. Okay then. Hello everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to my short talk on reconciling best practice and business requirements. I've also got a subtitle here. It's also how to convince people that they really don't need that 3D pie chart. I thought I'd be a bit traditional and start off with an about me. So I studied software engineering as my kind of background at the University of Reading and City University of London. At City University, I gained my first exposure to the world of visualization with a course there covering the fundamentals of data visualization. And as part of my final project, actually, I was involved in developing a visualization application for viewing transport survey data. Since completing my master's, so since 2016, I've been an informatics consultant with Cloudstream Partners, where I've been gaining a lot of experience with Tableau and dataviz out in the real world, which has been great. And I've also gained my Tableau qualified associate in both server and desktop in the process. So the talk I have for you today is between about 15 minutes and 20 minutes. I'm obviously eager to hear your questions and thoughts on the talk and the content here today. If you could leave any questions in the Q&A inbox there, or if you want to, and especially if I don't run out of time for questions, feel free to kind of tag any questions with hashtag don't ask me about 3D pies. And I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. So on to the meat of it. I'm not going to talk today about the detail of visualization best practice. There are plenty of books and talks and websites, loads of different places that you can get that kind of information from, and a lot of places that are actually better qualified to give you that information. What I am going to try to do today is talk about how we can reconcile all this notion of visualization best practice with the requirements that we get on a day-to-day basis as visualization practitioners. So I am going to use a quick simplified version of the notion of visualization best practice. I've got a quick definition here. And this is the way I think of visualization best practice. It is the techniques by which we present data ensuring accuracy of analysis and accessibility for all users. And the inverse of that, of course, is that anything that's bad practice will hinder your analysis and hinder the accessibility of the data for your users. So in my, admittedly, somewhat limited experience so far in the field, I've kind of come across two broad scenarios where I feel the business really requires you to deliver something that is bad practice. So in scenario one, we have the business that wants a certain chart type that they've seen somewhere, either online or in a book, that they think is fancy or they think is cool or they think will just jazz up their presentations a little bit. And in scenario two, the business just wants a table of data and nothing else. They've got a certain way of looking at the data that they've either developed themselves or they've negotiated with their broader business users, and they just want to see things in that way and only that way. Scenario one, as horrifying as it might be, is actually the better of the two scenarios, in my opinion. It's the one that I found easier to work with. It's a very aspirational scenario. As I say, they've seen something they want. They've seen a visual that they feel could represent the data in a good way. Whether it's a 3D pie chart or a Sankey chart or a cone chart or a scatter plot with pie charts on it, they've seen something that they want to try out, and they want to see something in a different way. And this is great. They're thinking visually. It may not be in line with what we would consider best practice. So there might be too many segments on the pie chart, or it might be three-dimensional, or they might be using a Sankey chart when really just a plain old line chart would do. But they're trying to think visually, and they just don't quite have the experience yet to understand the implications of what they're asking for. In this scenario, there are kind of two different sub-scenarios. There's this first scenario, which is something like a 3D pie chart or a 3D chart, which is a chart type that is technically impossible in Tableau, or technically impossible in the tool of choice. In this kind of instance, you really do have the option to fall back on, this just isn't possible. And that's perfectly acceptable. That's a good way of stopping them from going down that kind of bad practice route. The other option is to kind of, and you'll see me talk about this a lot, is to sit with them, talk to them, understand why they want the 3D pie chart, why they think that would be a good way of showing the data, and explain to them actually why it isn't a good way of showing the data. So in the case of the 3D pie chart, it distorts the relative sizes of the segments, it can throw off someone's analysis, and the usual danger of a pie chart, of course, is there are too many segments. So kind of explain to them why what they're asking is not good, and then kind of talk them through what the options are. So talk them through what they're looking for overall, and talk them through then what kind of chart types would match up well with what they've asked for. The second sub-scenario is the one that they've seen this kind of cool chart that's making the rounds, the latest in thing in the Tableau community. So, for instance, a Sankey chart or some kind of radial hierarchy chart that we've got here in the middle of the screen. These two things may look cool and they may look whizzy and they may look great, sorry, but they're not the best kind of view for the data. The data won't support that kind of fancy view, or, and this is a real issue, especially in a business environment, is that these kind of charts take time to read and understand. Even those of us familiar with a Sankey chart would need a reasonable amount of time to look at one and to kind of say, well, actually this means this or this means that, or I can see there's a lot of things flowing into exports from primary oil, for instance. But it needs that level of time to understand it. And often in a business scenario, you're looking at making a decision fairly quickly within a meeting and not having the time to sit and digest a chart like this. So you need to be able to talk to them the disadvantages of the chart types they're using, and what the advantage of being a bit more simplistic would be, or the advantage of a different complex chart type would be. But it's important here to, first of all, remember that they're driving this. They need to be the ones driving this. They are the ones going to be using this view. You need to kind of act as their partner, their driving companion, and kind of help them realize their aspirations. Because they want something new. They've come to you with a chart type that they want. It's the wrong chart type for the data and it's bad practice, but they want something new. So you need to bring them along with you and kind of talk them through the journey of, okay, this isn't a good chart type and this is why, but here are some other options and here are some more options, and here's an option which kind of takes your original idea and takes it to a place of good practice. They won't, and remember, they won't understand what bad practice is. They don't have necessarily, at this point in their visualization journey, they don't have the full knowledge that you have as a fairly knowledgeable expert in the field. So you need to be one to be their teacher in some respects. You need to talk to them about why and about how and about where and when to use a chart type. As I say, this is the one I prefer. It's the one that I felt I've been a bit more successful in helping to prevent bad practice in chart types. But it is one of two scenarios. The second scenario is much harder. This is the scenario where they have a lot of spreadsheets, just too many spreadsheets. You've got everybody has a spreadsheet, everyone gets spreadsheets. There's just hundreds of them. This is a much harder problem, in my opinion, to tackle. They've come to you and they said, we want this spreadsheet. We've always had it this way. It's always been laid out this way. This is the way we want to see it in the future. Now, this is a kind of real entrenchment of a position. Often I find this kind of resistance comes when Tableau has been forced upon its end users by someone in a position of authority or position of power. So often then executives come along and said, right, we don't want to see any more reports coming through as Excel spreadsheets. We want to see Tableau dashboards. And the poor guys who are at the sharp end of the stick have been given this dictate, and they panic a little bit and they think, right, well, but now that means we've got to take everything that we've done before and move it over to Tableau. And they get into this mindset that they need to be translating from Excel to Tableau, and they need to be doing it in exactly the same format, exactly the same way. And there's also the notion that a lot of times when you're coming to something like this, there's a history to these reports. There's meetings upon meetings upon meetings. There have been days of discussions, email chains that stretch into the hundreds of emails, all about these reports, all negotiating every column, every row, everything about these reports is negotiated. And often people just don't want to sit in another meeting about these reports. They're tired of them. They just want to move on. Again, as I said, I don't think I've got a good answer for a quick win on this situation. But what I would say is that it's a kind of an opportunity to approach this as a longer term project, to be a bit more iterative. You will often need to start with building or trying to build what they're looking for. It's bad practice, it's not good practice at all, but you need to be able to prove to them that it would be much quicker and more efficient to do it the Tableau way and to do it the visual way than to try and force this kind of tabular structure. You need to get them to think beyond the spreadsheet, and that's not a quick process. It is a very arduous process. It's a long process. It's a bit like chipping away at a mountain with a small hand chisel. You're not going to do it in one night. You will need a long period of time to really work through it. And again, in the same way as in scenario one, you need to take on the role of the educator in this. You need to become, in many respects, the evangelist of this and show them, why what they want is not good practice. And often showing, not telling, it's the old adage, show, don't tell, will give you that kind of power to say, look, this is what you can do. This is the possible. This is how things could be. And isn't it so much more wonderful? And isn't it so much more easy to understand? Never go to anyone, by the way, with, look at this, it's so much more pretty. Because prettiness in a business sense means nothing. What they're after is they're after accuracy, they're after information, and they're after the ability to make decisions quickly. They don't want to be spending days trying to read a beautifully intricate chart. They want to be doing things quickly. And the advantage of spreadsheets in their mind is that they know exactly where to look. So you need to make your views as quick as it is for them to use a spreadsheet as it would be for them to use the view. As I say, I'm not sure that I've got that quick win yet. I'd be really interested to hear if anyone's got a good way of moving a kind of really entrenched spreadsheet out of the way. So both of these kind of scenarios have some common themes in them. And I've kind of been very traditional here, and I've kind of got this nice little summary that's about to appear on your screens. You may not agree with all of my steps, and you may think there are more steps that could be done. And again, really interested to hear what you have to say on this. Always glad for a bit of dialogue on this subject. So, being very traditional, 4-part plan. Step 1, listen to what they want. You need to find out the objective of the view or the objective of the spreadsheet. You need to understand the context of things. If you don't have knowledge of what their overall objective is or what the overall context is, the views that you might propose may be completely off base. They may be wildly not useful to them or wildly inaccurate from their point of view. So you really need to kind of have a dialogue with them. In both scenarios, have a dialogue with them, understand what they want. Number 2 is to try what they want. Even if it's bad practice, even if it's going to be difficult, the only time I'd say don't try to do something is when it's going to cost you more time than it's worth. So if they've come to you with this plan for a massive 5-layer Sankey chart of amazement, that's probably not a good use of your time. Don't don't try that. But if it's something reasonable, like trying to replicate out a portion of a spreadsheet or trying to replicate out a structure of a spreadsheet or a particular pie chart or other view, give it a go, because you'll be sometimes surprised by what actually does work. But in doing this, have some alternatives ready. Be ready to show off something different to what they've asked. And the beauty of tools like Tableau is that you can do that quickly. It doesn't cost you as much time as you might think to have 2 or 3 examples of better practice ready and waiting for you. Point 3, this is really important, this is back in that role of educator. Explain to them why their original request is not good practice. Give them a bit of reasoning, some good reasoning, as to why, the pie chart with 15 segments isn't going to be appropriate in this scenario. And then show them the alternatives to what they've asked for. Show them the good practice, show them the possible. Your role as an expert in visualization, as an expert in the tool, is to know the limits of the tool and to know what you could show them. You've got to be the evangelist. I think I said this earlier. You've got to be the evangelist. You've got to take it to them and say, look, this is what we could do with this data in this tool, and it's going to be so much better. Number 4, you need to prepare. You need to iterate. So you need to be prepared to go back again and again and again and retread a lot of the same ground, maybe not necessarily with the same person, but you need to be prepared to just iterate constantly, to be making small changes and big changes on sometimes a daily basis to the same report. And sometimes you'll end up going in circles for a while, and that's fine. Because they need time to process what's happening. They need time to process and understand the reasonings, and and the limits of the tool and the notions of best practice that you're trying to generate with them. But you do need to be prepared for disappointment on this as well. As in all things, you can't always get what you want. You need to know that they are the client in the end, whether they're internal or whether they're external. They're the ones that are going to have to use this. You're going to have to help them to use this. So the 4 points quickly summarized: listen to what they want, try what they want, explain why what they want is not really the best way of doing it, and then show them the better ways of doing it. And number 4, iterate, iterate, iterate. And always, prepare for that disappointment, because it will come, and it will come often. So hopefully, I just noticed we're kind of coming up towards time here. Hopefully this will give you some kind of idea of how to approach these bad practice requirements. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I don't think that we can expect to get our way on this all the time. Despite our expertise, the business user will have a very clear idea sometimes of what they want. And if you can't deliver what they want, you need to be prepared for them just to say, well, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to go back to my original tool. I'm going to go back to my Excel spreadsheets. So you need to be receptive to what they want and understand that they're just trying to do a job, and that what you're proposing may not always be, or they may not perceive what you're proposing to be helpful. So thank you for listening. I know it's been a little bit rambly at the edges there. I want to say a big thanks to all the Fringe Festival team. Been great help there, guys. Again, you can either pop some cues for me to A in the Q&A box, or we've got the hashtag here, don't ask me about 3D pies, if you've got any other questions or want to have a conversation on Twitter or anything. This is a good time for me to plug, social media channels here. So I've got a Twitter feed there and my Tableau public profile there. Once again, thank you very much, and looking forward to the rest of the talks today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it's fair to say we've now crowned you the TFF Gift King. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation, and you have a very proud boss sat opposite me.